In this video, we will show you how you can ease your invoicing control based on draft supplier invoices generated from purchase orders or incoming shipments. This video will only apply when you also have the Purchase Management app installed. Odoo allows you to use several invoicing control mechanisms for purchases. So you can have invoicing control from the purchase order, you can have invoicing control from the purchase order lines, or Odoo also allows you to control your invoices from incoming shipments, and can be one or more incoming shipments. So as a default value, to define your invoicing control mechanisms, you choose the one that fits your own processes from the Purchase Settings menu. You can use the Invoice Settings menu to select your default invoicing method. For each purchase quotation, you can of course change the default method that is proposed. The pre-generate draft invoices based on purchase orders option corresponds to the based on generated draft invoice option from the purchase quotation. It creates a draft invoice when the request for quotation has been confirmed. The based on purchase order lines option creates purchase lines to invoice in the invoice control menu that you can see from purchases invoice control. One line corresponds to one purchase order line. It allows you to create one invoice for several lines belonging to one or different purchase orders. So pay attention that some conditions have to be met, such as you need invoicing for the same supplier. The based on incoming shipments option, that's in this menu, means that an invoice is created from one or more incoming shipments related to the purchase order. It allows you to invoice only the quantities actually received. Now let's keep the default setting, so we don't have to apply anything, and we create a new purchase order from the purchase menu, request for quotation, and we click create. And we will issue an order to our Odoo your postbox provider. As you see, it's like in the invoice, I key in some letters and I select the supplier concerned. We will order 10 postboxes. So I select the product, I change the quantity, and the unit price and default tax are automatically proposed. Now, from the Deliveries and Invoices tab, you see that the invoicing control is set to based on generated draft invoice, which was default option that we chose in the invoicing control dropdown. You can manually change this option here as long as you have a request for quotation. If you can confirm the purchase order, you can no longer change the invoicing method. So we will keep the default option. We will save the PO so that the prices will be changed. Then we will confirm the purchase order to show you what happens next. On confirmation of the order, the draft invoice will automatically be generated because we selected the based on generated draft invoice option. You can open it by clicking the Invoices button, as you see here. So you simply click and then you have the draft invoice. You can return to the PO and click the Receive Invoice button, which will also open the invoice for you. And another way to open the invoice is to go to the Purchase menu, Invoice Control on Draft Invoices. And here you will find the draft invoice. And of course, for your accountant, The draft invoice will also be available from the Supplier Invoices menu. And to allow for easy searching, you can click draft and you will only see the invoices that have been pre-generated or that are still in draft. Since this draft invoice has been created according to the data in your purchase order, you can easily match the invoice to the supplier invoice on its arrival. When your supplier added, for instance, transportation costs or changed quantities or amounts, you can still edit the invoice because it is in draft status. So to edit, you simply click edit and you change whatever is required. As a second example, we will change our default invoicing settings from the purchase settings. So let's go back to the settings and then click purchases. And we will now create invoices based on purchase order lines. So we change the option in the drop-down and we click apply. So we will create two purchase orders for the same supplier, and we will show you that the invoicing control is now set to the new default value. So we go back to purchases, request for quotation, we click create, we choose our supplier, we order the same product, let's say we order 5, and when we go to deliveries and invoices, we will see that it is based on purchase order lines. So we click save, we confirm the order, and we will duplicate this order. We change the quantities, we add another product, like for instance, and we add a text, and then we save, and in this deliveries and invoices tab, we also have based on purchase order lines set as invoicing control. We confirm the order. And then we go to the invoice control menu and we select, of course, on purchase order lines. So now, of course, we would like to invoice all the order lines of the Odoo, your postbox provider supplier, by using the filter to only show order lines for that supplier. As you see, we also have our first PO here because we didn't validate the invoice yet. So we will select our supplier, and as you see, as soon as I key in Odoo, we will have here search supplier for. We click and we choose Odoo, your postbox provider, and we select PO2 and PO3. We click the Create Invoices option from the More menu, which will appear as soon as you select the purchase order lines here. We click Create Invoice. We confirm that we indeed want to create the invoice. And now we can directly open the invoice and validate it. So as you see, we have here the 3 order lines combined into one invoice. So let's compute the total taxes for this invoice. We click Save. And when you have the verification total, you also have to edit according to what's on the actual supplier invoice when you receive it. Of course, you're also going to enter the supplier invoice number and the invoice date, but now we simply validate the invoice. So I will also go back to the accounting menu, supplier invoices, and validate the one that we created before from the purchase order. And now we have a third option. So we will give you one more example to show how invoice matching can also be done from one or more incoming shipments. So we switch to the purchase settings and we will change the default to based on incoming shipments. We click apply to change the default value. Okay, so we return to the purchase menu and we will create a new purchase order for Odoo, your postbox provider. We select the postbox article and let's order 10. We will also order an iPad. There is none. We will also check the list to find some extra products, or we will simply create a new one. Let's order a chair, create and edit the product. We will give it a public price of 500, a cost price of 400, and in the accounting tab you see that the default taxes have been applied. So we save the article and we will order 5 chairs. So let's save the request for quotation. We go to deliveries and invoices and we see that the default invoicing control is now set to based on incoming shipments. So we created a new purchase order with several products and multiple quantities for which we will match the invoice based on the incoming shipments and the actually received quantities. So this will allow you to match your supplier's invoice to the quantities you have received. So we will confirm the order to generate the incoming shipments. Now let's put on the hat of a warehouse user and process a partial delivery for which our supplier will send us an invoice. We go to All Operations and click the Ready Receipts. So you will note that the one we just created has the invoice control set to be invoiced. So we open this operation, we click Transfer, and we say, okay, we haven't received the chair yet, and we received only 8 POS boxes. We click apply to transfer and confirm the partial receipt. Now, from the invoice control method, we click on incoming shipments and we open the partial receipt and we click create invoice to generate the draft invoice. We will use default settings and click create. So this is how you create a purchase invoice based on one incoming shipment. We validate the invoice and we go back to our warehouse to process 2 partial receipts for the remaining quantities. So we do exactly the same. We click ready. We select the remaining quantities. We click transfer. And in this shipment, we received 5 chairs. We click apply. We go back to the ready transfers. And as you see, a back order has automatically been created. So we transfer because we also received our 2 POS boxes and we click apply. Now from the on incoming shipments menu, we can apply a filter to show only the shipments to be invoiced. So we click here to invoice and you will see that the one that has already been invoiced disappears from the menu. So we select both shipments and as we did before, we click the more button and we click create draft invoices. And now there's a very important option. If you want to create one single invoice for both partial receipts, you have to check the group by partner checkbox because this means that you have received one invoice for several receipts at a time. And this is what we will show you here. Of course, if you receive one invoice for each shipment, you will not tick this box. So we click create to confirm that we want to create a new supplier invoice. And as you see, we now have one invoice for both partial receipts. And this one we can match according to the supplier invoice we receive. Thank you for your attention.